Seems to have gone from bad to worse with the Astros. To help us make sense of it all, Luis Ortiz and, of course, our KHOU 11 baseball analyst, the former Major League scout, Jeremy Booth. And Jeremy, let's just get right to it. What is wrong with this team?
You know what, Zach? They don't have their personnel. Like, they don't have their players. That's what it is. And we talked about, as the first half was winding down, we talked about all the different things they may be able to do, whether it was the medical staff, whether it was Alvarez getting healthy, the pitching resource, whatever was going to happen, it comes down to players. And if they don't have their players on the roster to compete night in and night out, expecting them to win is a challenge, right? I mean, the fact that they're swimming right around 500 baseball, in their last 10, 15 games is a testament, again, to Joe Espada and Dana Brown and just the overall depth that they've been able to accumulate to help them get this far. But they don't have their players. And if you don't have your players, you don't have your horses, it's hard to run the race.
And I do think this is a case of accumulated fatigue, you might say, with guys who maybe aren't used to being in the positions that they're in. Is that kind of the way that you see it, Luis?
Yeah, I think kind of to the point of both of you guys, they just kind of run out of weapons at this point. They're swimming against the current, right? Like now it's just getting harder and harder because what they were able to do for the first half of the season, specifically towards the end of the first half of the season, at this point, and also I think maybe mentally now, it's kind of hard to get knocked down when you're down, right? You've suffered so many injuries, and then now you kind of go into this slump. You have this losing streak. Mentally, kind of, I feel like it might start to take a toll on them a little bit. But yeah, for sure, it's just there's too many injuries, man. At some point, you can't win with the Sugarland Space Cowboys at the Major League level.
Right. And speaking of that, we're coming up to the trade deadline this week, and it seems that with who the Astros have had to play, which is the majority of their guys in their farm system, you could say, playing at the big league level and doing a good job, I might add, for most of the year. But at this point, do we think, as we've heard Dana Brown talk about earlier this week, that the Astros will have to trade someone from the Major League roster? And Jeremy, who might that be?
The Astros are, and again, trade deadline is 31st, right?
Yeah,
so we're coming up in a few days from now. The Astros are going to have to do something to push themselves into August. You've already seen other clubs begin to sell. You've seen people begin to move players, and the Astros are involved, but they're not able to get something over the hump thus far. Personally, if I'm Dana Brown, I'm trading the Major League medical staff to anybody that will have them, okay? Because right now, that's your biggest problem, is not getting those guys back at the deadline. But if you're looking at, in all seriousness, what they can do, they don't have anybody to subtract. They just don't. They're going to have to do that. But if they subtract it, they might as well sell the whole thing and go backwards even further, right? So I don't like saying that. This is probably the worst possible scenario that a club could find themselves in. At the trade deadline, limited depth in the minor leagues, guys that could help playing at the big league level, and not able to acquire anybody else to help you because you're not sure when you're going to get your own guys back, right? And so that becomes a very uncomfortable position and almost an unwinnable position for this front office. So, they're going to have to do it, but I don't know who they're going to be able to do it with.
So I'm curious, just to clarify, Jeremy, I mean, you said at this point, if you're going to, trade from the Major League roster, are you saying maybe just go sell mode and kind of take a step further back? Or, I mean, I feel like they're in a good position this year. They can compete.
Yeah, I'm saying that if you sell a piece at the Major League roster to get anything back from, you're going to take yourself out of contention anyway, right? Because everybody you got that can play, you need to keep because you don't have any more depth and you don't know. And I joke about the medical staff, but I'm only half joking because the amount of damage those guys have had with this club, whether it's pitching, keeping them healthy, whether it is workload management, whether it's conditioning, whether it's just overall analysis of something as much as imaging on a hand. The missteps with this medical staff have been so large that the Astros have themselves in this position in no small part to the failure to execute keeping guys healthy. And so if you go trade somebody off the big league roster like a McCormick or somebody who just got back or even a young prospect, right now you need those guys. What are you going to get back for those guys to help you? Is it going to be an upgrade? Is it going to be something that's similar? If it's something that's similar, you just stand pat and you try to hope the guys come back, because otherwise you're weakening your position instead of strengthening it.
It does feel kind of like a house of cards right now, to Jeremy's point. If you take one piece away, everything is going to crumble. So I can understand rebuilding if you are going to end up trading somebody that's going to already take you out of the race. But is that how you also see it?
Well, look, I think it's interesting because Dana Brown said today that they will trade from, more than likely they will trade from the Major League roster. Why? Because we all feel that they don't have, to Jeremy's point, people in their farm system or prospects big enough to trade and get a good piece back, right? But I mean, how they're doing it and calling up all of these guys, it's kind of interesting. I mean, you see it on social media. We even shared a video right on Instagram where people are saying, where do the Astros find all these guys? Brandon Walter, and guys that he's come up here and pitched. The other day he pitched 7 innings, 1-run game. I mean, maybe these guys, even though they don't have a household name, they're producing. Maybe they do have some value.
I don't know. I don't know if these guys do necessarily have value. I think that much of baseball, and Jeremy, feel free to weigh in on this if you have an opinion on it, but I think a lot of baseball sees the Astros as overperforming before they hit a wall. And I think that a lot of baseball probably is feeling like they're hitting that wall right now. Would that be an accurate way to describe it?
I think that's pretty fair. I was at our event, in last week or this last few days, and I heard some scouts say the Astros are trying to give it up. You know what I mean? And that's a way of saying, not intentionally, right? It's a way of saying they're struggling, can't get over the hump, all their guys are gone. It's a metaphor for everything that we're saying tonight, right? And so if you look at what the club is doing, Dana, as we just talked about, Dana affirms they have no choice. They have to trade from the roster. But you're already relying on guys you DFA'd. You're already relying on guys that you did not have at bats for. You're already relying on guys that can't make your postseason roster to help you win in the big leagues. What exactly, and I love me some Dana Brown, boy, I've known Dana a long time, what exactly are we trading for and from and with? Again, the guys that are going to come back are what you need. You need to tread water with that aforementioned and referenced weak schedule that they've got, allegedly. Weak schedule.
They just got swept by the worst team in the division.
Yeah, well,
what are we doing, right? You don't have a choice. You have to keep these guys intact and hope you get your guys back, because I honestly don't know. And I thought about this all week because I was just watching what was going to happen. Trade deadline coming up this next week. You start planning ahead, and you watch a guy like Josh Naylor get moved, and you hear names like Suarez. And yes, I know we're talking about the Diamondbacks with that, but then Randall Grichuk gets moved, right? And so you start thinking about all these pieces that would help right here in Houston, and you can't get any of them. Instead, they're going within your own division. And so that tells you right there exactly how the rest of the league sees what the Astros could offer. Overachieving is a nice way of saying it. Overperforming, anything you can think of that goes above and beyond what they're expected to do is what that club is doing right now. So, again, kudos to Joe Espada and kudos to Dana for amassing this depth. But if you're already relying on guys that can't make your postseason roster, and you're relying on guys you DFA'd earlier this year to come back and play and help you win, we might have an issue.
Well, one of the most difficult decisions they may have to make coming up at the trade deadline, maybe it is difficult, maybe it's not difficult. I don't know, depending on which way they see it happening or not happening. But, I mean, Jeremy, do you think they should or they will consider trading Framber Valdez?
Considering his contract's coming up, so considering the contract situation.
Right.
You do that and just pack your bags, buddy. It's over. Like, just empty the clubhouse right now and go.
Yeah.
So do I think they trade Framber? If they give up, they do. If they trade Framber Valdez, let's talk about 2026, okay, and what they're going to get back. So I don't think with Dana's. Well, see, I say that, and Dana said trade from the Major League roster. He just didn't say which direction, right? So let's go ahead and leave that as an open door. But my comment stands. My point stands. If they trade from the Major League roster, they're punting. if they try to get something that is a spare part somewhere to help them, they've already got that. I'm curious to see what kind of move they can pull off if the rest of the league knows the same things. If anybody else in the league thinks that they can win a World Series, and please forgive me for saying this, with Lance McCullers and Shea Whitcomb, knock yourself out. Okay? Go for it. If you think that you can win a World Series with Yordan Alvarez, well, the Houston Astros do too, right? And so you can't move those type of guys. It's going to be interesting to see which way they go. But it really is the worst possible position. And I want every fan in Houston who watches us to hear that. It's the worst possible position these guys could find themselves in. And it's not because of the talent on the roster, and it's not because of the division. It is purely because guys can't seem to get healthy and get back on this roster to win games. That's why they are where they are.
And it's funny how quickly things change in a major league schedule, right? Because within the course of a major league schedule, because you had about 10 games ago where people were probably saying, trade Fromber, are you kidding me? That's unthinkable with the way that this team is playing. But now, maybe that does become a thought to be entertained. And I do think that the Astros face a very difficult position when you look back at last season and they knew Bregman's contract was coming up, right? In theory, they could have traded him at the deadline, got a bunch of...
Same with Kyle Tucker, they did it.
Got a bunch of parts, but then what does that say to your fan base? I don't know. So you do probably have to weigh those things. If you're the general manager, what do you think?
I think if you're not going to give him the big contract, why let him go for free? I think, look at the NBA. It usually happens in the NBA where guys... Sometimes they do walk away for free, but for the most part, it's like, look, you're not going to stay here. That's not your goal to stay here long term. Then I'm going to trade you and get as much as I can in return, especially when you have a guy like Framber Valdez, who is an ace, who can go out there and get you, 7 innings pretty consistently, right? And the way that he pitches, that curveball that he's got. Listen, I think you got to put a lot of things on the balance, right? Start to weigh things and see if guys are going to come back. Is that going to be the solution? Can that get you over the hump this year? And really, what kind of run can you make? But if you're going to just let him go the way that they've done with a lot of guys, George Springer, Garrett Cole, Carlos Correa, Alex Bregman, at what point do you not get something in return? They did it with Kyle Tucker.
Well, we will have to see. So many questions to be answered. Well, there are more questions than answers at this point, but we'll get some of those answers as the trade deadline approaches here on Thursday. Thank you so much to our KHOU 11 baseball analyst, the former Major League scout, Jeremy Booth, for joining us to talk Astros.